I had this conversation with a friend of mine not long ago, and it was a really interesting one due to the nature of what's happening energetically at this time, in this moment. And I'm making this video in the end of April 2024. And when we had our eclipse season, when we had the lunar eclipse, I believe it was in March, which went through to the solar eclipse, which was April the 8th, I believe, that crossed the Northern Hemisphere, crossed the United States, the solar eclipse that crossed the United States. In that period of time, that window of days and nights, then that time between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse, there was a lot of posturing, in my experience with people around me, a lot of posturing in regards to people pushing into other people's boundaries, a lot of projections, more than usual, and then what that brought about was great amounts of confrontation and conflict. And one of my friends brought this up to me, and I wanted to make a video about it because I've seen it myself in the last 3 years in the wellness movement in this country where I am now, this dominion, really more than a country, called Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, which is known in English as New Zealand. In the wellness movement in this country, I feel as though, in my experience, is in this movement, is that it draws people into the wellness movement, the conscious development movement. I wouldn't call it spirituality, because for me, spirituality is simply breathing, and spiritu is spirituality. I would consider it a conscious development movement, a personal growth movement, a choice to be more conscious of how one is using their awareness, how one is perceiving their reality, how one is co-creating their reality. All these are very important aspects of, in my perception anyway, in my point of view, the idea of conscious development in regards to knowing who you are, which in the end, if you're in this process of conscious development, I feel as though is one of the end goals, to know who you are and to know what the nature of what we call reality is, if you want to go deep down that rabbit hole, which I do. So for me, the process is a long one, but it's a journey, and the experiences I've had over many years and continue to have helped me to go through the process of conscious development, personal development at that too. So what I'm seeing in the wellness movement in this country, Dominion, is a place where people take refuge. And my friend Jason put this pretty succinctly to me and called it spiritual bypassing. And that's exactly what it is. It's strangely enough, a lot of people that I've met in this wellness movement, I'm not speaking about myself, I'm talking about people that I've met, and in my observation, not judgment, my observation, a lot of them I haven't known for very long, but the ones that I have known for a long time, in this movement, in this awareness, a lot of them have become more and more neurotic in their behavior, in their words, deeds, and actions. And I'm seeing that neurosis play itself out in a way that is not being addressed. And this is the nature of the spiritual bypass. The spiritual bypass, in my perception, is focusing on the love and the light, constantly focusing on the love and the light, thinking, and I get it. I get the nature of being in a place of deep gratitude and knowing that you're grateful for all that you have in your life experience because of the nature of where you're at. I am grateful every day I wake up in the morning, even when I'm achy and sore in my body. I'm still grateful for the experiences I've had in my life experience up until that moment. But I'm not bypassing my existence, not bypassing the reasons why I feel that. If I feel achy, if I feel sore, if I feel any kind of emotional imbalance, I'm not bypassing it by focusing on the love and the light and saying that doesn't exist. The feeling that I'm feeling, the sensations I have in my body, in that moment don't exist. It's all love and light, baby. It's all love and light. And I see a lot of people, and I have seen a lot of people in the lately around April. It's almost the end of April now. It's April 27th today, 2024. I've seen a lot of people around me in that spiritual bypass mode where they are focusing purely on the light. As my friend Jason said to me, James Smith, Shem Lamek said to me back in the early 90s when we had a dinner around a table in a house behind the cathedral in Nelson, where a friend of mine, Gabby, used to live. We used to meet on Thursday nights. Other people in that spiritual development, that conscious, personal development movement in Nelson at the time, which was powerful. People we met at Gabby's place on Thursday nights had ice cream together, cups of tea and ice creams, and we'd drop in and chat with each other. And James looked at me and came across me. I've told the story before on my YouTube channel. James looked across at me and he said to me, "Look at these fools, all facing towards the sun, not one of them turning around to see that they're casting a shadow." And that is what I'm seeing. It's a lack of, in my perception, in my point of view, there's a lack of embracing, there's a lack of understanding, there's a lack of decision and choice to not turn around and face one shadow, or to go within to look at one shadow, not with the assistance of any kind of substance. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who, as well in my life, that use fuck tons of plant medicine all the time. I mean, at least I'm talking like at least at least 5 to 6 times every 3 months, and they're more neurotic now than they've ever been before they even started taking the plant medicines. You know, I get it that sometimes you can get what you need from an experience, but so many people that I know who go into a retreat to do plant medicines, they get nothing out of it because they're not integrated from the experience. They go from one retreat to the next retreat, can't wait for the next one. But by doing that, in my point of view, this is deepening their level of psychosis, the level of neuropathy. They're not integrating from the experiences, they're not getting what they need from the experience, and there are other ways to get to a place where you can get that slow working rate towards self-discovery, contemplation, introspection, just sitting down on a couch like I am right now, sitting on a couch and looking at a wall. Just looking at a wall and just turning your monkey mind off and looking at a wall through introspection, and then seeing what comes up in the body. For almost a year in 2017 I did that. That was part of my process of my shadow work, was to sit on a couch, look at my green curtains in my apartment in Berrima in Wellington, just stare at them every night after I had dinner, turn everything off, all my electronics, I turn them all off, sit on the couch and just stare at my curtains. I did that for about 7.5, 8 months during the week, and all that percolated up into my being from my shadow. I faced so many demons that year. In so many ways I was showing things about myself, who I'd been before that moment, and the patterns, the beliefs, the hidden truths that I kept in myself, because I was constantly distracting myself by utilizing technology and books and sex and drugs, constantly in a state of distraction. In that year, there was no exception for me. I was also in the weekends taking my time out from doing my shadow work to embrace the vitality of life and experience, and people around me who were with me in that area at that time of my life, especially in the burner scene here in Wellington in New Zealand, where I am right now, and was embracing that vitality and that joy. But even that had a shadow side to it, and that shadow side began to make itself quite prevalent, quite shown to me by the end of the year, and I saw through what was a miasma of bullshit, really. The whole idea of this community, but there was no community. There was only people out for themselves in that community to get what's best for them, in a self-serving mannerism, and not neurotic, but definitely a narcissistic, deeply narcissistic traits through a lot of people in that community that I dealt with in that year. I began to see it by the end of the year myself, and I walked away from it 2018, 2019, because I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. But in 2024, I'm seeing this within the wellness community, the levels of emotional narcissism, the levels of definitely levels of displaced energy in a way that's not facing the shadow, not embracing the shadow, not taking the time and the energy to stop and to be able to actually feel into the darkness, feel into what is coming into their bodies, feel into the space of actually knowing what's happening for them in that moment. They're just so distracted, and if they're not distracted, they're projecting their own wounds out onto other people. And I'm seeing it, and I've seen it a lot within the wellness movement from people. People who have this fantasy, and the fantasy they come into that wellness movement with. And when they come in with that fantasy, they project their fantasy out into the world, and when it isn't met, isn't co-created, then the projections turn ugly, and what is hidden from the people around them becomes prevalent in the actual movement itself, and it causes massive amounts of discordance. It causes big issues around misbehavior. Shall I put it that way lightly? I'm putting it in a light term there. Misbehavior by the masculine towards the feminine, or the feminine towards the masculine. I mean, there's definitely confrontation there as well, But in this moment, 2024, in April, I have seen this spiritual bypassing and this focusing on all that is love and light, without the embracing, without the experience of people coming forward and lifting themselves up to look at their darkness and then bring the darkness in and say, yeah, this is me. I'm going through this. This is who I am. This makes me. This is my yang to my yin, or my yang, or my yin to my yang. This is what makes me whole. This darkness, this unconscious behavior that's making itself known to me. Because in this moment, in my perception, once again, my point of view, as we go towards the end of the ascending yuga cycle, the Kali Yuga cycle, come out of it next year. Apparently, on the equinox, the March equinox, we come out of the ascending Kali Yuga cycle into an age of transition. As this is happening, we are more than ever given the opportunity to ride the wave. And by riding that wave, what I mean by that is we are given the opportunity to actually come to a place where we can utilize the energy to move through our darkest recesses of our being, bring that into the light, and those wounds, we can heal those wounds more efficiently and with this energy more promptly and with aplomb than we could maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because the energies are so quickly moving in that phase of the cycle. But facing, as I am today, I'm reading a book by Alpha Furstenberg called The History of Electricity, and it's about electricity and life. As I'm reading this book, I am seeing the collective shadow put onto our civilization, and the enabling of that collective shadow by a few people to control the many. And even though I've shared information about this book to people, most people just don't want to know anything about it. It doesn't affect me. I'm okay. But that's not why I'm sharing the information. I'm sharing the information to get people to actually, and my point of view, once again, is to share that information to get people to acknowledge the collective shadow of our civilization as we move out of it, and by acknowledging it, doing everything in their power, if they choose to, everything's a choice here in regards to co-creation, bringing that collective shadow and allowing it to also, in that collectivity, bring in their own personal shadow and reflect it back at them. And rather than bypassing it and go, oh, it's got nothing to do with me, my life is wonderful and great, I'm so grateful for everything I have in my beautiful creation. Hey, it's great that you do feel that way. But rather than doing that, perhaps looking at the collective shadow, which is embodied in that book, in my point of view once again, embodied in that book, and going like, oh, well, that's the collective, I can see there's a collective shadow here of this death cult that's run the civilization for thousands of years, and it is a death cult. And that is reflecting back at me, what is my part in this creation? How am I enabling this to take place? How am I enabling this? And by asking these questions, that brings up and dredges up your own, if you choose to let it be, your own shadow, your own hidden, unconscious behaviors, patterns, beliefs, thoughts in your awareness. And by doing that, and by utilizing this energy and rising up, we can move through this process and get back into the life stream. Because in my perception, once again, my point of view, if we're not using this energy to move with the life stream, then we're going to fall behind. And this is an opportunity for us to use that energy to rise up. And part of that process is leaving behind, is healing and putting down that which no longer serves us, that which needs to be healed, healing it, bringing it into us, transmuting it, alchemizing it, and rising up with it, rather than ignoring it. Oh, it isn't there, but quietly it's bringing you and dragging you back because it needs to come to the light. It needs to come into the light with you in order to rise up. And that's the whole thing. The neuropathy, in my experience, only comes because people aren't dealing with their shadow. They're not dealing with their unconscious behavior, thoughts and patterns, thought patterns, belief patterns, behaviors. They're not dealing with those. And by not dealing with those, what happens, in my experience, is that they become projections. Because they can't deal with them, they've got to go somewhere, so let's project them out. And that is the disruption, that is the energy, that is the experience I've had and seen around me with people around me in my community here in this part of the world. And within wellness festivals the last 3 years, this projection, this fantasy and projection. And the fantasy not being met means the projection becomes more about wounding, the wounds, projecting the wounds. I'm not seen. No one sees me. What I want, I don't get. Just 2 examples of my own experience, which I felt and became aware of at 2 festivals I went to. My own unconscious patterns and beliefs coming to the surface in order for me to heal and transmute and alchemize them at the festivals I went to. And I did. But that's my personal growth, my personal experience with my awareness, moving through that process in order to get to the other side and move up and ascend with this energy, with my personal development processes. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Mā te ua. I'll see you again soon.